The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our software automation webinar series. My name is Sasha Pozzoli. I'm a marketing coordinator here at SWK, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. Today, I'll be joined by Drew Nelson, Senior Advisory Sales Executive from SAP Concur. Today, he'll be walking you through Concur Travel, Expense, and Invoice, an integrated solution for finance leaders. Today, you'll learn how to manage the data you need to work more efficiently, have control, and avoid blind spots within your organization, including an ROI savings. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. All lines will be muted during the presentation. We will be recording and distributing the webinar to you in a few days for your convenience. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them in the chat box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar sidebar and then hit send question to staff at any time during the webinar. And without further ado, let's get started with our presentation.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Sasha. And hello, everyone. I look forward to connecting with you a little bit. Just to talk about spend management, what successful organizations have been doing and where we've really found some success. So I want to start with giving kind of, I guess, the typical spending breakdown that we see in a lot of organizations, where a lot of folks we talk to have looked at payroll as a good place to start as far as looking at where do they outsource and find some efficiencies within an organization. That only makes up about 35% of total spend that a typical organization may see. Where we come in is everything else. So for T&E, typically that's maybe 10% to most organizations, and that everything else falls in that, a lot of those AP vendor invoices that an organization has that make up a really big portion of their total spend as an organization, but so many have not looked at how can they get more efficient in that space? How can they turn that part of their business potentially into a profit center versus a place where they just spend money? And really where Concur comes in is we're built on the premise that there needs to be a better way. So you think of it in relation to mobile banking, where we all had to go to the physical bank to be able to deposit a check, to be able to get cash, where today most of us manage all of that on our mobile phones. We can deposit checks, we can check balances, we can transfer money without having to go to the bank. Why can't it be the same for expense reports, for those vendor invoices that we can manage on the road, that we can do mobilely or from our desktop and save organizations really a ton of time? That's what we'll talk about today, how we do that and what that looks like. And I'm going to break it into the three different buckets. One being travel. We'll start there, and we'll talk a little bit about how Concur does travel efficiently to help organizations save not only time, but a ton of money. Then how we do that as in relation to expense reports. So how do we take not only that travel spend, but any kind of spend we have it as an organization, whether that be on corporate cards, whether that's on personal cards that we're reimbursing employees, but how do we manage spend both mobilely and then on a desktop as well? And then we'll finish with the AP vendor invoice tool and how we apply the optical character recognition to manage the whole procure to pay process. And not only that, but we're also surrounded by a ton of other solutions that tie into Concur to benefit the traveler, from direct integration to Marriott and 100% of the domestic airlines to ERP and IT tools like integrating into Sage and Intact and other tax solutions, time tracking, et cetera, et cetera. We've built a huge network of our partner ecosystem to help support and make you not only the travelers or the folks spending business out in the field, but the back office then as well. So as we look at travel, there's really three different ways we do travel. Where a lot of organizations get them to do nothing, where their travelers are booking on consumer sites using consumer rates, where they have little and no visibility. There's no control over this. So we can slap hands on the back end, but there's really no front end control on how our employees are spending the way they're spending today. The other side of the spectrum is that total spend management. So SAP Concur Travel with a travel management company creates that integrated travel and expense solution gives you great visibility, policy enforcement, the following duty of care. This is where we set up the policy on the front end to make sure that people aren't booking stuff they shouldn't book. Now, we've also created a middle solution. So those companies that aren't ready for a fully managed travel program, but that want to get benefits of those TMC discounts or the feeling like they're treated like a large organization, we've created a tool called SAP Concur Hitmonk that allows organizations to get the rates through a consolidated buying power of many, many small and medium-sized businesses together. It's integrated into Concur. It'll give increased visibility. It doesn't have all the policy enforcement. So many options as far as how we do travel booking. But let me show you a little bit about what that looks like if you were to use the fully managed Concur travel. So everything's in one platform. So when I log into Concur, I'm going to see my travel expense, my invoice, approval, reporting. It's all lived in one place. When it comes to booking travel, I'll do that here on the left-hand side. It looks like a lot of other travel aggregators out there, like the Expedias and the TripIs, but it builds it all in. It's very easy to search. And this is where I can apply some of that policy. So I can have my most preferred airlines that we use as an organization, and then I can start to flag different flights here as well, either by cost, by preference, and then flag why employees may or may not be able to book one of those. So these ones here flag, they'll let me book. There's just different levels of control here. We can let them book with an explanation, or we can stop people from booking altogether. We can define that based on class. So if our C-level is allowed to fly first class, we can allow that, but the salespeople have a different rule. We can build in any number of rules that you may have, or help you come up with those travel policies that you may have as an organization. All this can be done mobilely as well. So I book a lot of my travel on my iPad on Sunday afternoon because it takes very, very little time, and it's very easy to do mobilely. As I mentioned, some of the ecosystem we have for our travelers to make it easy. We have direct integration with 100% of the commercial airlines out there. So I'd say about 95% of the hotel chains are directly integrated. So when I stay at a Marriott, I never have to take a picture of my receipt. I never have to forward that anywhere. There's just a direct integration to my expense report to itemize that bill for me. I'll show you an example of when we get to the expense report. So it's going to take every one of those line item charges, as well as all the car rental, including Lyft and Uber. So when I took my Lyft this morning from the hotel, it automatically put that in my expense report. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to record that. It's going to itemize and categorize that as it needs to be. So that concludes the travel. Now let me talk about where that goes from here. So now that I've completed my trip, how does it show up on my expense report, and what does that look like? I hope this isn't the image you get from the employees in your organization, but there's still so many that are still doing this today. I talk to organizations that say they get a shoebox dropped off on their receptionist desk, and they're responsible for taping them to a piece of paper to scan them into an attachment that gets grouped together with an Excel report. So we're able to make that a lot easier. Some of the common things we hear that we're spending just way too much time filling out and tracking expenses, or losing receipts. Stuff is getting lost, right? We're coding incorrectly. It's missing details. We don't have any control around the policies that we want employees to follow as an organization. And again, it's just really too much paper. It's spreadsheets and burdened by that as an organization. What we're able to do is really simplify that process from start to finish. So on the capture side, we're going to capture those receipts on the go. It's using optical character recognition. We're not inputting or manually typing any of that information. We're taking a picture of the receipt. It's getting inputted into Concur, the location, the vendor, the amount, the date, etc., and then storing a picture to attach to that. We're then processing very streamlined within the expense report approval workflow. You can follow any approval workflow that you have as an organization. We're going to validate the accuracy and compliance to our policy to anything else we want to track to make sure that we aren't breaking any of those expense policies and holding employees accountable. And then we're going to pay and integrate. So if employees are getting reimbursed for spend on their personal card, we can do an ACH deposit directly to their bank account, or we can go ahead and pay those multiple cards that you have as well. And then we're going to go ahead and integrate that information into your ERP. Make sure that your books are going to tie out. Again, the way that this starts is we're going to take a picture of that receipt. So I'm going to go and I had a lunch at Perry's restaurant. I left my receipt there. I just took a picture. And what the OCR did is it read it pulled that in as Perry's. It also is going to flag that this is one I use my corporate card for. So it's going to marry by itself the corporate card transaction. So it's going to say that Perry's receipt was $40. It matches my Amex card transaction that automatically came integrated into Concur. And it's going to give me visibility to that immediately. And I can also view the receipt directly in Concur all the way along as well. So what that does is it gives us visibility of those company card charges immediately. So there's no waiting until the end of the month to get that Amex card statement. It's going to give us visibility to that immediately after the card has been swiped to see some of those liabilities we have out there. We can sort this and look at this a number of different ways. But now let me get started with my expense report and show you how some of the policy then gets applied to it as well. So after all those expenses get brought in, we're going to run this against our policies that we have as an organization and flag any of those exceptions. So here is an example of a business meal that I had where I didn't add attendees or add a business purpose. So I can go ahead and see where it's flagged there as business purpose. I can enter that. I can mark if this is billable or not billable. So if we're billing this back to a project or to a direct client, I can mark that, and that's going to bring that notion back into the ERP so that we can make sure that we're invoicing our clients appropriately based on projects, phases, tasks, customers, etc. I can allocate that out in any number of ways. Adding attendees, again, very, very, very easy. I can sort a number of favorite groups that I have. So if there's a group of consultants that I take out on a regular basis, I could save them, or I could save groups by client, etc. Or just go ahead and search and add any person to that, either brought in from our CRM or uploaded as lists of different employees that we can have saved in Concur for you to easily add those attendees to your event. And I go ahead and save that. From a mileage standpoint, we do that a couple different ways. One is very, very easy. It's GPS tracking within the Concur app. So I click on my SAP Concur app on my iPhone or Android, click on mileage, and I can choose to either start my trip. I can even set it so that if I'm a consultant that does a lot of travel Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, I can set this up so that anytime my car is moving between those hours and days, that it'll start to calculate that mileage that I drove. But I can just go ahead and start it. It's going to start tracking immediately when I start driving, and even notify me when I stop and ask me if that trip is done. Start adding that directly to my report. Not that employees out there are being mischievous, but this is the number one category of a padded expense. Even from a simply rounding exercise that employees are doing, this is going to eliminate that completely and get our actual exact true mileage from a reimbursement standpoint. So we're going to track that. We're going to add that to expense report. We're going to save an image of that trip that they made as well, and we're going to put that all in their expense report. See, I didn't do that. I forgot to enter it. We also have integration with Google Maps, so it's very easy for me to go into Concur, type in my waypoints, calculate that route. I can deduct my commute. I can make that a round trip, and then add that mileage to my expense report. And go ahead and save that. From an approval workflow, so I'm done with my expense report. I'm going to go ahead as a user. I'm going to submit this. It's then going to go to my manager for approval. It's then going to go to accounting to make sure that they get the final say have these expenses been allocated to the right cost codes? And then we're going to go ahead and, and reimburse our employees. We're going to update the ERP and allow that data to be analyzed. So I think this is one of the big advantage of Concur too, is how are we using this data? Are we going back to our top spend categories and negotiating discounts? Because we can now see how much money we spent with Marriott last year. If I need this workflow approval to change at any time, I can do that as well. So if I want to add an extra layer based on different thresholds, whether that be amounts or whether that be because I allocated to a specific project, we can do that. So we can build this out to match whatever kind of approval workflow you may have it as an organization, and all that approval can be done mobilely as well. So I don't have to be at my computer. I can easily see someone's full expense report right on my phone and be able to approve that expense report easily on the go. So then when it gets to being fully approved, that's when we're going to reimburse that employee. We're going to pay the credit cards very simply through ACH. So it's as easy as an employee setting up their bank account and their own Concur profile. When my expense report is solidified and finally approved, I then get a reimbursement within 3 days directly to my bank account. Or we can go ahead and pay those corporate cards for you, removing that process of going to Amex.com and logging in to be able to pay that back. We can do that automatically and take that off your plate. So that concludes the expense side. And we'll move into Invoice, which feels very, very similar as far as where that process that it goes through. So from the capture piece of using the optical character recognition to grab all the relevant information off of an invoice, to moving it through the workflow approval process we have as an organization, to paying those invoices, integrating that and allowing you to analyze that data, really giving you that visibility all the way across the road. So first, let's focus on the core functions of, let's say, the capture piece of it. If you'll see on the right-hand side example of an invoice I had coming in from Office Warehouse. So you'll see it's going to go back and match to my vendor master record that I've imported from my instance of Sage, for example. So I'm not maintaining those two databases, but it's going to search for that Office Warehouse and match that to my vendor master record. It's then going to grab the invoice number, invoice date, any amounts, the subtotal, tax, freight, and total those out. Then I can capture any of those line items then as well, and individually code those out, whether it's by different projects, by that's different cost codes or allocations. I can very easily do that directly from here. And this is all the tool using this by itself. And then I'm going to route it to my workflow approval process, whether that's by the person that cut the PO or their purchaser, or it defaults to a certain person based on amount of that invoice or based on a certain vendor that it comes in. We can start to route that internally to the best starting point, and then follow whatever workflow approval process you may have for that vendor, that project, that amount, etc. And again, that can all be done mobilely. So here's a view of what that everything looks like. So I can see my expenses, my expense reports, my approvals, all right here. I can see all those invoices that are currently sitting in my queue. Give you an image of the invoice. I can see how we're coding it. I can decide to send back or approve. All directly from my phone on the go, so that I'm not slowing down. Paying those invoices, make sure that we're capitalizing on any early pay discounts or different vendor rebates that we may be able to get from processing those quickly, but ultimately giving you great visibility all the way along as well. So look at this from a perspective of accounts payable. So here's where you can quickly see where the invoices sit, where they're at in the workflow, when they're due for payment, which invoices have exceptions that need to be resolved, and quickly see specific invoices based on a number of different criteria. There's also here where AP can do the final review of invoices before approving them for payment. And then we're going to go ahead and pay those automatically as well. We can do that a number of different ways. We can cut checks on your behalf. So this is another big ROI, instant savings for a lot of companies. At cost, most of the studies out there have found that check cutting internally costs anywhere from $5 to $7 when you count for ink, check stock, postage, time of someone actually signing that check. Well, Concur can send the check to your vendors for a $1 check, and that's on your check stock coming out of your bank account. Looks like it's coming directly from you in an envelope stamped as well. Or we can do ACH for free, or we can also pay by credit card or virtual card options out there as well, which is another way we've been able to offer a direct rebate back to organizations as well, where they find that there's a ton of value in that. Outside of the automated payment ROI, there's some big ROI studies that have been done as well, and we'll follow up with an IDC white paper that gives more background on where these stats are coming from. But just to share where organizations are finding some of those key ROI, 78% less time booking a business trip, allowing those employees to spend time doing revenue generated activities versus spend time searching for airlines and hotels and cars, etc. 19% more efficient expense report handling. So from a back office standpoint, where are we finding some of that efficiency and leverage by having an automated process? But 60% less time needed to fill an expense report for the end user. So again, we're saving them time when they're booking their trip. We're saving them also a ton of time when they're actually doing that expense report. I've talked to too many organizations that are spending a couple hours for an employee to do an expense report, where we can do that. The average is 20 to 40 minutes per person to file an expense report for the month. Then on the invoicing and accounts payable benefit side, we're paying faster. We're saving time for the invoicing staff. They're really finding a lot of efficiencies. So there's the stats you see there, based on average organization, some would be different for how much you're spending. But an average of a $672,000 business travel savings per year per organization, which turns into a 650% 3-year ROI and a very quick payback based on their investment in Concur. Our mission here, with over 40,000 customers across the country, we have a strong track record of helping customers find efficiencies within their organization. But what we really want to do is help you anticipate and avoid risk, become more financially viable, help you scale your business for growth by allowing you to have better visibility and know what's coming and see around the corner. A couple of stats from some of our, or a couple of references from some of our clients that said where they found the most value out of Concur. So we can have margins being compressed. The only way we can be more efficient worth looking at, or finding huge time savings in the time it takes to do stuff, or just bringing credit card transactions in very, very easily. So with that, I'll conclude here, but open it up for any Q&A that we may have.
Thank you, Drew. Before we jump into the Q&A, I want to also just let the audience know if you have any additional questions after the question and answer session, if anything comes up, please email your customer account manager or camteam@swk.com. If you don't know who your CAM account manager is, we can always help you with that. So now let's see what questions came in for the question and answer.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you tell me a little bit about how the pricing works with Concur?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic question. So instead of being based on a user volume, we actually have unlimited users for an organization, but it's based on volume. So on the expense side, it's based on number of expense reports that a organization would submit in a monthly basis, and then on the invoice side, it's based on number of invoices. That all works on economies of scale. So an organization could pay anywhere between $6 to $14 per expense report, or anywhere between $2 and $6 per invoice. So again, that's based on your unique requirements, some of the options that you add on to Concur, but we can help find out what that quote looks like on an individual basis with you as well.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? Anything else?
I'm sorry, I do have another question. On the invoice side, you mentioned that there's a capture service, and the invoice is, captured within, the system. Is that invoice captured by us? Is it outsourced? Or how does that capture process really work? And what is the accuracy of that process? As we know, like some invoices are, most of them we get are electronic. Some of them we still get are handwritten. How does all that work?
Yeah, fantastic question. Thanks for asking us. There's options there. So we have different organizations that do that differently. So from a capture standpoint, 100% of the invoices will go through that optical character recognition, and we can bring those in a number of different ways, whether that's to a dedicated email address, whether that's forwarded to AP at your company email address.com. That's going to bring those or scanned in directly into the optical character recognition within Concur. And then there's two options as far as how that validation works. The OCR is very good. It's exceptionally good on the, with receipts, because all receipts look the same. You think about most receipts, there's a vendor, there's a date, there's an amount. When it comes to invoices, there can be big variations. Every company does them a little different. Say, well, you might get an invoice that's 20 pages long that has different amounts, different titles. So, no OCR in there out there is 100% accurate. What we've done then is we've created a validation team. So you have the option where you can validate that internally within your organization, or we have a team that sits in Minnesota that's all they do, is they follow your internal organization rules that you have for invoices and make sure that we're inputting 100% of that invoice correctly within Concur before we start to route that for approval. And we turn that around pretty quickly. So within 1 or 2 days, we're going to have that invoice validated, but give you visibility to that invoice on day one. So the answer to that question is there's two different options, and we'll work with you to make sure that we're coming up with the best choice, best option for your business process and for the biggest ROI and time savings for your organization.
Thank you. I really appreciate the clarification on that question.
Oh, thank you.
So it looks like we don't have any other questions. We can wait a few more seconds if anybody wants to type in any last minute questions into the chat. Okay, so it looks like that concludes our webinar today. Thanks again for attending, everyone. Have a great day.